Nick's long struggle with addiction and years of pent-up resentment. This was no longer youthful rebellion. It had become something far more painful and complicated. Tom's recollection brings an entirely new layer of meaning to the courtroom developments in January. According to him, this tragedy was not a momentary outburst. It was the heartbreaking result of months, even years, of emotional pressure. Rob and Michelle had tried to repair things with unconditional love, but lacked the necessary boundaries to protect themselves. And that is what torments Tom the most. He feels that Hollywood, including himself, respected the Reiner family's privacy to the extent that no one intervened, no one asked difficult questions, even when doing so might have saved lives. The following day, when Nick Reiner's name officially appeared in the arrest records, Hollywood was no longer itself. No more half-whispered rumors. No more off-the-record calls. Everything exploded into the light, raw and merciless. The biggest question was no longer what happened, but why the warning signs were ignored for so long. According to initial investigation documents, Nick did not attempt to flee. He made no effort to erase evidence. No plane tickets. No escape plan. Paradoxically, this is precisely the point the defense team clings to like a lifeline. Nick's lawyer, a familiar name in high-profile defense, immediately issued a statement. His client did not act with premeditated intent to kill, and will not plead guilty to first-degree murder. Not completely innocent, but not a cold-blooded killer by legal definition either. And that is the shocking twist. For the public, the image was already clear: two beloved people murdered in their own home with a knife, a deeply personal act of violence. But in the courtroom, emotions hold no weight. Only psychological structure, mental state, and the chain of events leading to that irreversible moment matter. According to sources close to forensic psychiatry, Nick Reiner had been unofficially monitored for years. Not for a single diagnosis, but for a complex combination: impulse control disorder, substance abuse, and a lingering sense of failure under the immense shadow of his legendary father. Rob Reiner was more than a father. He was an icon. A name that silenced the room just by being mentioned. And for Nick, according to those who interacted with him, that shadow did not bring pride, it brought suffocating pressure. Tom Cruise, in private conversations with close friends, recalled a haunting detail. Rob once told him that Nick always felt like he was living in an audition that would never end. A phrase that may have sounded metaphorical, but in the light of this tragedy, it is chillingly literal. Nick could never just be Nick. He was always Rob Reiner's son. According to investigation records, that night showed no signs of forced entry. No prolonged struggle. No screams heard by neighbors. Prosecutors believe the initial confrontation may not have been violent, at least not in the first minutes. A conversation. A dispute. Perhaps a refusal. Perhaps an ultimatum. And then, everything spiraled out of control. Autopsy reports show wounds were inconsistent, not technical, but chaotic and indicative of an outburst. This is a detail the defense will exploit fully, acting in a state of loss of control, without prior planning, with no intent to end lives from the outset. But for the public, these details do not ease outrage. On the contrary, the pain becomes even more bitter. If it wasn't planned, it was a disaster that could perhaps have been prevented, if someone had spoken up sooner. Hollywood began to question itself. In the days that followed, a series of major figures quietly canceled public appearances. Not for PR reasons, but because of the emotional shock. Rob Reiner was not just a colleague. He was someone who had nurtured, protected, and offered opportunities to an entire generation. Michelle Singer Reiner, the woman behind the spotlight, began to be remembered more, not just as Rob's wife, but as someone who silently kept this family together through many storms. And now, both of them were gone in a way no one could accept. What about Nick Reiner? At his first court appearance, he appeared gaunt, vacant-eyed, either crying nor resisting. Some say it was apathy. Others see it as the collapse of a mind long eroded. And in that moment, a chilling question rang in the minds of many. Is this the face of evil, or the remnants of a tragedy written long before? This trial will not only judge Nick Reiner. It will examine how we perceive family, fame, pressure, and the invisible demons that money or power cannot erase. And the cruelest truth is, No verdict can bring Rob and Michelle back. After all the records, the cold forensic reports, the intense legal debates, the story returns to its starting point: a family. Not a legend. Not a cinematic icon. Not a shocking public scandal. But a family shattered beyond repair. Rob Reiner spent his life telling stories about human connection. He believed in love, in kindness, in the human ability to save each other. Ironically, the story that now bears his name is one where no one was saved. Michelle Reiner, the woman behind the brilliance, received no speeches, no applause. Yet, she was the silent anchor keeping this family upright through years of instability. And she left in silence, in the cruelest way. Nick Reiner, if sane, will carry the heaviest moral burden a human can bear, taking the lives of his own parents. If he truly lacked awareness at the time, he will live the rest of his life as a painful reminder of a system, medical, familial, social, that failed to intervene in time. And perhaps what makes this case so haunting is this: there is no comforting answer. No pure villain to hate. No perfect victim to pity. Only humans who loved, tried, feared, and ultimately failed. The trial will end. A sentence will be pronounced. Headlines will fade from front pages. But the questions this case raises will linger. What should we do when family love becomes a threat? Where do we draw the line? And does society have the courage to confront mental illness, not as an excuse, but as a reality that must be addressed sooner, more decisively? Rob Reiner's legacy will live on through his films, stories that touched millions of hearts. But alongside it will always exist a silent mark, a real-life tragedy that no script could soften. A story with no happy ending, only final silence, and lessons paid for with lives that should never have been lost.